I'm Max Clark. This is 20 Minutes Max, and I'm going to go on a rant about SASE. No, not I'm so sassy, I guess, but I am. Talking about Secure Access Service Edge. What is SASE? Well, it's a bunch of things. It's actually everything. SASE is a definition of basically the everything in the kitchen sink thrown in together into one, that's just become SASE, right? Thank you, Gartner. And actually, something that people don't talk about that I actually really love about SASE is the best hack towards better security for your network. I'll talk about that in a moment. But first off, okay, what's SASE? So on your network function, when you talk about, connecting a location, a premise to the internet or to applications that are not at that premise, or you're going to talk about remote access, remote users connecting back, either connecting to the internet and working or connecting back to your application locations, right? Whether those offices or data centers, everything that gets involved in that, right? So SASE is your SD-WAN, your next generation firewall, secure web gateway, your ZTNA, your remote access function. If you have CASB and DLP, everything that is involved in doing those things for your company get grouped together into this thing that is now referred to as SASE. So you can go out and you can buy point solutions and you can say, okay, we need a firewall and we need a VPN and we need some sort of CASB or DLP solution and I want a secure web gateway and I want this, I want that. And you can go out and you can buy them all independently, or you can, find a vendor with a SASE architecture and you can get them all from one source, and then you can have all the benefits of having one vendor, one throat to choke, and everything integrated and working properly together. And, and then the clouds part and the sky, the sunshine raids through and everything's wonderful. And then you have SASE. I said earlier that SASE is a phenomenal hack. One of my favorite hacks to improve network security and cybersecurity for an organization. And why is that? If we're doing an SD-WAN project, right? So now every SD-WAN vendor has a SASE component to it or has a SASE endpoint in mind, right? Because it's not just SD-WAN. SD-WAN is too limiting SASE in order to be a modern SD-WAN vendor and have any, a future survival, right, in the marketplace. Well, there you go. Go out and you buy your SD-WAN, but it's got the SASE functions into it. Now you can put a next generation firewall on top of it, or secure web gateway, or, RBI, or, it sounds like I'm doing baseball stats, right? So secure web gateways, SWG, remote browser inspection, RBI, cloud access service brokers, CASB, data loss prevention, DLP, ZTNA, zero trust network access, right? I actually know what these acronyms mean. That's, again, such a nerd sometimes. Anyways, looking at these things in terms of evolutions of companies, right? You're not going to go from we've got all this stuff on site and we're going to rip it all out and we're going to replace it. Usually it's, we've got all this stuff on site, but we've got something that we're not getting that we need, right? We've got some requirement that got passed down to us from a business. And usually that could, what's a good example? We need better audit of our remote user access to our secure data environments, right? To our cloud, right? We've got a VPN right now, but we don't get granular level audit. Or we've got a requirement, a supply chain audit, a requirement from one of our clients that says that we have to ensure that only company-owned equipment can access data that houses our client data, right? So when you start solving these problems, you could solve them in a really narrow, limited way. You get no long-term benefit out of it, or you can solve them in ways that give you expansive benefit out of it, that give you into these architectures and approaches where you can do something next, right? Because why would you want to solve something for today and then 3 months later find out, hey, I've got this other requirement and I've got to go out and figure out how to solve it as well? Or do you want to just say, hey, I solved this requirement today, and then in 3 months they say, hey, we need this other thing. You go, okay, great. We just have to go and check that box and it turns on. That is, it's a beautiful thing. Let's talk about SD-WAN and SASE in a little more detail, because the marketing machine has gotten a hold of this animal thing. Again, thank you, Gartner, creating a term that everybody now has to adhere to. So everybody's trying to figure out how to claim they adhere to it. So, let's start with SD-WAN. Let's just brag on SD-WAN for a moment. How do I want to start with this? First off, SD-WAN is magic. I love SD-WAN. We should talk about the differences between SD-WAN for a moment. So, SD-WAN by definition could just be you've got a web interface to configure, or a cloud hosted web interface to configure your network edge, your router and your firewall, which is usually kind of one function now for a lot of environments. And you might say, well, why is that important? Well, if you've never configured an ASA firewall, VPN, VPN from scratch in the command line, you do not appreciate how wonderful being able to go, I want a VPN from here to here, go. And it just turns on for you. And it's just like, holy smokes, there's a VPN now. Now you don't get the joy of the CLI of finally having a VPN come online where you get to do a dance, you get to do the engineer happy dance and celebrate that you've got this VPN working and you have no idea why it's working or why it wasn't working beforehand and what any of this junk actually means because you've been copying out of like 15 tech notes on Cisco's website. SD-WAN can just be, point and click configuration, right? So Meraki is a great SD-WAN. So by the way, Cisco bought Meraki because they're great switches and great access points and pretty decent firewalls. And, it's blah, blah, blah. It's SD-WAN. Cisco has purchased a lot of different SD-WAN, trying to figure out their SD-WAN story. I think they're still trying to figure it out. Point being there is you're not purchasing a Meraki MX to provide SD-WAN for real-time circuit health, latency, and path selection, right? You're not doing it with that because it doesn't do that. If you didn't know that, now you know that. Meraki does not do that type of SD-WAN at all. So don't buy a Meraki if you want that. Palo Alto purchased CloudGenix. Phenomenal SD-WAN box. Does just some really cool stuff. Really sophisticated, path selection, really sophisticated in application aware, traffic routing. Hey, this network link seems fine, but this application has really, really, slowed a TCP handshake, but this other link is much better. So we're going to use that other link as well. Really super sophisticated stuff. Problem with, I don't say it's a problem, just the architecture when you look at what Palo's trying to do with CloudGenix, still requires you to have physical firewalls. From Palo Alto in a lot of places, that's just the way the architecture works. You can put Prisma on top of it, but guess what? You're still running, Palo Alto firewalls all over the spot. It assumes a hub and spoke configuration. It assumes that you're going to have some sort of data center with the SD-WAN sitting in that data center in order to go back to your remote locations. And if you've got, an application infrastructure that is designed around that, then it's great. Absolutely. You should totally look at using it. If you've got an application infrastructure that doesn't assume that, then it's not so good. Or if you've got stuff running in your remote locations that need to be accessed directly from the internet. When does that ever happen? There's some random FTP site. It's critical to, $100 million line of business running in some place that you can't turn off or change or move anywhere else in the world because that would make, obvious sense, right? Maybe not great architecture for you. Ariaka, phenomenal SD-WAN for, low latency, high packet loss links, common application, of course, dealing with, cross-continent, infrastructure. You've got manufacturing in Brazil with an ERP in the United States, or you're in China or EMEA, these sorts of things, or even domestically in the United States. You've got a lot of locations, and some of those locations might not have a lot of bandwidth. Ariaka is a phenomenally interesting application for this. Probably the most common box out there in the market today, the VeloCloud. Why is it so common? So VeloCloud, what was VeloCloud? VeloCloud was built to be an MPLS replacement, SD-WAN. Instead of having private networks, you could overlay, what's effectively VPN tunnels that are dynamically created and routed by this VeloCloud box, and either replace your MPLS, or in a lot of cases people augment their MPLS. They still maintain an MPLS circuit and they run an over-the-top overlay on with a Velo to provide redundancy if that MPLS link goes down. So you don't have to have dual network MPLS. You can go down to single network MPLS, which just saves you boatloads of money. It's great at doing that. Again, when you look at how the Velo routes to the internet, configuration for Velo it does not have ingress traffic, right? So you've got to deal with maybe double natting in certain situations. You've got NAT boundary changes. Velo deals with this with their public gateways, or if you're dealing with a service provider, the provider gateway. So that way, for your VoIP traffic or your interactive applications or your VPN endpoints, they can go to IP addresses hosted in that gateway and come ingress. But not all your traffic is going to go between that gateway. This could be good for you. It could be bad for you. It just depends on your application. All these organizations are running and chasing the SASE definition as aggressively as possible. And, part of the reason why Velo is so popular and you see it all over the place is because they have a really strong reseller program, and they really attacked the, service provider and the reseller market. If you talk to just about all of the telcos or cable companies on the market and you ask them about their SD-WAN, or they try to sell you an SD-WAN, it's probably going to be VeloCloud based. That's just what their go-to-market was and what they came about with. And again, this might be good, it might be bad. It kind of really just depends on what you need. These are all it depends answers. Some service providers, went Fortinet. Fortinet doesn't give you ingress IP, resiliency. It just can't. It's a firewall. It's on-premise. Does it do decent path selection failover? Yeah, of course. It does way better than Meraki. I mean, phenomenally well better than Meraki. If you're a MSSP and you're trying to do firewall firewall management for, downstream customers. Well, now you can offer and say that you're doing SD-WAN as well, because that Fortinet can give you enough of that solves enough of their problems. See a lot of people partnering right now with Checkpoint. It's good, probably. It's a good answer. It's also, it has a reseller program that works for them. So they can take their existing SD-WAN and they can say, now we're SASE because we've got, the firewall, the SWG, the ZTNA, everything else, it just happens to be provided by dual entities. The ideal with SASE becomes one vendor, this one throat to choke. There is a really, I forgot to mention one, Cato, Cloudflare is trying to chase. They're not a SASE vendor. They don't provide the on-premise infrastructure. They don't have an SD-WAN function, but can get a lot of you get the next generation firewall, RBI, ZTNA, all these functions out of Cloudflare. So what are you going to maintain on site, and does Cloudflare then work for you or not? It depends. Cato Networks, next generation firewall can give you all this stuff soup to nuts, and they provide their own SD-WAN. They've got an appliance called a socket. It's not designed to be an MPLS replacement. Could it be? It could be. It has single instance firewalling, a lot of functions. They include down to MDR functions within their infrastructure. Is it right for you? It could be. It depends. See, these things all really depend. The point here is also, just kind of understand and know what you're buying and why you're buying it. If you think you're getting a single vendor, a single console, single admin, and you go to a Cisco Meraki based solution, just know that you're not getting, circuit failover SD-WAN, and you're going to have a Meraki console and you're going to have an OpenDNS console. And then if you go and get Duo, you're going to have a Duo console, right? And, the same thing is true with Palo. You're going to have different interfaces to do different things in. If you're with a service provider that is using VeloCloud and then is overlaid Checkpoint on top of it, you've got two interfaces. If you're purchasing and you're leveraging the MSP to actually maintain this stuff for you, then you definitely don't care. You're looking for, the MSP that can provide this in the best way possible for you, that actually fits your needs that you need to be. And if you're looking to do this yourself, how many different screens do you want to be looking at and tracking through? These are all considerations and things, that we talk about, that we get into, that we're looking at. We start, what is the problem? What is the objective that you're actually trying to do? Are you having a problem with your network? Do you have a limiting thing on your network? What is a business use case and objective that you are trying to resolve? Now, if you told me that you had, manufacturing in South Africa and you had bandwidth constrictions for traffic leaving the continent, and you needed to be selective on what was going out, and you needed to do TCP deduplication, and you needed to do X, Y, and we went through that with you in a workshop, and this is what we dug out. It's actually a really easy selection process. There's not very many options. There's two options. There's two options that'll solve that problem for you in the SD-WAN world. If you told me that you wanted to keep your existing firewalls because you've got an investment in them and you need to maintain them, and you needed to provide access to applications running on the premise, and you wanted inbound survivability of your IP addresses, so if your circuits failed over, that your IPs persisted. Again, there's really only two options for you on the market that will do this. It's not a complicated selection process. We don't need to go out and send an RFP out to a dozen different people. I know organizations that do that, but honestly, that selection process, that decision's already been made for you. You've already decided who you're using. You just don't realize it yet because your needs dictate it. Anyways, back to the beginning here. Take this thing full circle. Love SASE and love what SASE provides, and love the SASE idea within companies, because we find cases where, we've already solved 4, 5, 6, 7 problems for an organization. They just don't realize it yet. When they find out, they get really excited. It's like, wait, I don't have to do anything else. It's just here. You're like, yeah, all you got to do is just enable that feature. Nothing is quite as exciting when you're dealing with IT staff that's overwhelmed and they think it's going to be just this grueling, agonizing, multi-month process to go through discovery and selection and evaluation and RFPs and procurement and legal and implementation, integration, all that other stuff in order to solve some business requirement that was just handed to them. And you can say, hey, look, you've already got it. Just check a box. So big fan of SASE for that. And also big fan of SD-WAN. SD-WAN is magic when implemented properly. It is just, from an old network guy, it is just phenomenally amazing when you get the right one, and just all your problems go just are gone. Anyways, I'm Max Clark, and that was 20 minutes. Have a great day.